My good people, it is time yet again. I hope you're in the mood for a weird one today. This time, we're not quite diving into mechanics, but we're diving into one of the games themselves. So real quick, story time. I love Archipelago. It's a multi-world randomizer client that I'm sure a bunch of you have seen popping up in your recommended videos, if not already gotten addicted to yourselves. For the uninitiated, think about randomizers like what Zelda and Metroid have, where the items are in random spots and you take different routes through the game each time. Then, take multiple games and mix those items across all the games. If you know about SMZ3, a randomizer ROM hack that combines Super Metroid and A Link to the Past and has you collect items between both games, it's like that. But Archipelago is a platform where you can put any game in there if you have the software development know-how. And one of my favorite games to play randomizers of is... this is gonna surprise you. That's right. Timespinner! I'm so big on this game, dude. Here, look, I made a bunch of sprite sets based on other games like this Shadow skin, or SMW Mario, or here, check this out. It's Ben from Pokemon Ranger Guardian Signs, and all of his different actions have him calling on different Pokemon. Oh shit, Pokemon! Oh my god, they've got Archipelago implementations for Red and Blue, Crystal, Emerald, even Fire Red and Leaf Green. These are all great randomizers that shuffle the key items and have excellent quality of life features, like removing trainer sight, giving experience multipliers, and giving guaranteed catches so you can speed through the game. Fantastic stuff that I could play through again and again. And I have. And I will continue to do so. But okay, that's all preamble and context to this, a project called Manual for Archipelago. This is their logo, for the record. It's literally as it sounds. Instead of hooking into the game and having software that automatically sends and receives items, you play the game and manually do all that yourself. And one day, back in 2024, I had a vision. While making my videos, I spend a lot of time using PK Hex to edit save files to get footage I need. I play on randomizers made with Universal Pokemon Randomizer ZX, and there are cheat codes for the common features like boosted experience and removing trainer sight. What if I put those together and made a manual that was as close as possible to the real thing? What if I made a manual randomizer for Pokémon Platinum? What followed from there was my journey into the world of ROM hacking. Planning the randomizer itself was fairly simple. I mean, it took a while, but simple. But delving into the game itself showed me so many goofy little things under the hood that I just had to bring it to you guys here. Apologies for the break in the middle of our Poke Snack tour while I went and made an entire game, basically. But hey, I'm back. Drop a subscribe and we'll keep the journey going. Really quick, let's go over what it is that I made, so you can get a feel for the project and how I found myself with all this trivia that inspired this video. This is the Pokemon Platinum Archipelago Manual, shortened as the Platinum AP Manual. In its current state, all key items are removed from the game entirely, replaced with this, the AP Manual check. It essentially does nothing, but we will talk about it later. As you play, you mark off checks in the game's client and discover items in a new order. When you receive a particular item, you can go here, the AP Items room, which carries every item in the game. So right from the start, instead of the usual Coal Badge and Rock Smash combo, you might get the Bike, which can't get through Ravaged Path, but can go up the slope on Route 207. From here, you look for the badges, the HMs, and collect all the necessary pieces needed to reach the Pokemon League and beat the game. But when the game is all randomized, there is a lot of funny and niche interactions that you just never notice in an average playthrough. I'm not talking about stuff like, hey, did you know that if you were to trade a Pokemon with Surf and head to Canalave before the encounter with Cyrus in Celestic Town, you'd run into these guys? No way. Half of this is going to be stuff that you can't know just by playing the game. This is deeper than Easter eggs. These are the secrets of Pokémon Platinum, deep under the surface. Before we delve into any explanations though, I want to shout out the Kingdom of DS Hacking server, run by Jason. And above all, these specific wonderful people. They are the creators and maintainers of DSPRE, the DS Pokémon ROM editor. This is the tool that broke down so many barriers for me, and much of the video will use its UI and terminology. Oh, and because I know they'll want to know, I'm on version 1.12.5 here. I know that's ancient at this point, but it's what the project was made on. Alright, everyone ready? Let's get started. If you were to come from the north side of Route 205, you'd find that the grunts blocking the bridge don't actually stop you. And bear in mind that with just bike, you can go straight to Floaroma Town from the beginning of the game. The bike's a little overpowered in this game from the randomizer perspective, I won't lie. But these guys don't activate until you hit this trigger right here, starting the conversation with the Windworks employee's daughter. Which makes this a pretty scary potential softlock. Once you talk to this girl, you're trapped here, unless you have Surf or Rock Smash, and their respective badges, so you can get out of here. Oh, right, or you could get the Works key and remove these guys the intended way. I had an idea in my head of how I wanted to solve this. How about we pave over the ravaged path and make a one-way path? I present to you the new Route 204. It does not allow for forward access into Floaroma, but it will prevent you getting trapped there if you get bike first. But then I ran into this funny issue that taught me another thing about Platinum. See, because Route 204 is split by Ravaged Path, they actually use this opportunity to load data while you're traveling. If you just head down from Route 205 all the way to Jubilife with no stops, you'll be greeted with this. A completely untextured Jubilife. It works, more or less, and as soon as you enter a loading zone, it'll be fixed. This is what the gates are for. See, the reason the gates are strewn all about the region aren't because the game needs to load all the terrain that's coming up. It's because of the textures. We need a loading zone to refill memory with any textures the next area is going to use. The various buildings that sit on top of the terrain are also loaded into memory. If you've ever wondered what would happen if you just took all the gates out of Sinnoh and traveled around like that, now you know. Well, even though we've escaped Floaroma, I've actually got a bunch more I want to say about the place. But we're gonna come back here later. In the meantime, I just want to mention the Works key. It's an item that is extremely weak in the randomizer item meta. If you're wondering what I mean, consider this. You can get to the other side of these grunts with the bike, the Works key, or the ability to surf. But while surf and the bike open up huge chunks of the game, the Works key only clears the Valley Windworks event, and does nothing else, on top of needing you to have gotten Rock Smash and the Coal Badge first to even get here. There aren't even any items in the Windworks to give it a secondary use. So the idea that a given randomizer playthrough will require the Works key is a bit of a running gag with my friends. The fabled Works key seed, we call it. Maybe one day even you will see the Works key seed. So I had to cut down on intro time heavily for this rando. Consider that Crystal and Emerald have an intro like this, but Platinum looks like this. For the rando, I just have you go straight to the rival battle, and then you get warped to Sand Gem afterwards. There's also no Sand Gem tour or catching tutorial. But that means that you no longer get to see this. If you were to receive the bike before you and your rival go to Lake Verity, you can get on while he's with you. You can get on before you meet him, and the game will leave you on the bike. And it doesn't matter how fast you're about to head to that lake, that boy will book it after you. Fortunately, I can just give that same treatment to all of the stat trainers. Cheryl's breaking out of this forest in record time. Over in Jubilife, a lot had to be changed. For example, if I want the Pokétch to be randomized, you have to be able to leave without it. That's easy, just remove the trigger at Route 203 that makes Looker stop you. I don't have to remove Looker himself, so let's just... Oh. Alright, why does this happen? The whole of this game is split up into what are called headers. The entire game is split into 32 by 32 maps, as seen in the in-game map. Each square on this map represents one of those 32 by 32 chunks. And a header is a space drawn around a group of maps. It controls the weather, the music, if there's a little name pop-up that appears when you enter the header, and if so, which one, and crucially, it contains the data for every single NPC in the header. Now, in almost every single video game that has area-based loading, I'm talking Metroid Prime doors, rooms in Mario 64, Zelda dungeons, the game always loads the area you're in and all of the adjacent areas, or at least areas that you're about to enter. Pokémon Platinum does not do this. The game loads the area you are in and not a damn thing more. The moment you move from the Jubilife City header to Route 203's, we load everything on Route 203 and deload everything from Jubilife on the spot, which means NPCs will simply cease to exist when you transition areas. So why don't you ever see this in-game? Well, there's two options for how Game Freak handled this. Option 1, make a system that allows headers to borrow an NPC, so to speak, from a neighboring one so that you never see this happen. Or 2, painstakingly place every single NPC in the game such that we leave tons of buffer space between them and the boundaries of their maps so that an NPC just never is on screen during a transition. What do you think they picked? Now, I'm not a dev for this game. I could never know what was going on. Maybe it was just a precaution as they tried to account for the DS's limitations. But unbelievably, the answer is make the system described in option 1, then do option 2 anyway. Let me put this in perspective. There are roughly 233 tiles visible on screen at all times with the standard camera angle that the game uses for all overworld sections. If you're in the middle of a town, it's honestly pretty difficult to stand in an area that has no NPCs on screen, unless you hug a wall or something similar. But once you start heading towards a map boundary, well... Some of my favorites are this incredibly jarring transition from Route 220 to 221. Route 220 is filled with swimmers doing loops around the islands. Look how many are on screen at once. Now let's just head to Route 221 and... the long, silent corridor. And right back where we left off. Literally 3 guys on screen right now. But if we back up and head to Sandgem, look at this. This youngster walks around, and he can actually get close enough to the boundary that you can see him disappear as you walk into Route 219. But what about that system from earlier that I mentioned that's supposed to circumvent all this? Well, those are known as aliases. As mentioned, they can visually borrow a neighboring header's NPC so that they won't flicker when passing boundaries. And yes, there is a flicker if you were to just put a guy in 2 headers at once. The game actually uses aliases constantly, but pretty much only for these guys. These signs, despite being 3D models, are indeed just regular NPCs that would also disappear, but the devs clearly wanted them nearby the entrances to routes, so aliases it is. All this to say that I could easily make an alias for Looker on Route 203, but I didn't. Why? Funny. Back to the Jubilife grind, the next thing we need is to handle how you get the Pokétch. I love this kind of thing in Rando, because what was once a blink and you miss it moment in a vanilla playthrough, now potentially becomes a game-wide search. In the vanilla game, you simply talk to 3 clowns, answer yes to their sneaky tutorial question, and get a Pokétch coupon. Actually, have you ever looked at the coupons in your inventory? They've all got unique and cute pixel art advertisements for the Pokétch. Once you have them all, turn around and turn them in to receive the Pokétch. This little setup is great for our randomizer. Now we can make it so the 3 clowns can each give a check, and in order to receive the item that the Pokétch CEO has, you have to find the 3 coupons scattered across the world and bring them back. If only it were that simple. First off, I've decided to keep this whole interaction gated the same way in vanilla. The Pokédex CEO does not start the promotion until you deliver the parcel to your rival. So, now the parcel is also an item you have to receive, and your rival's mom can give you something random. Except, your rival does not check for the parcel in your inventory. Something speedrunners have certainly known about this game for a while, but probably not the agonizingly full extent of, is that the game just will not check for items in your inventory. Assuming, well, the player obviously has it, otherwise they wouldn't be here. I need this boy to check for the parcel, so now I have to pop open his script and personally add that in. That's not that weird, mind you. You can't even reach Jubilife without the parcel in vanilla, so whatever. But now we return to the clowns. First off, for some ungodly reason, the clown holding Coupon 3 is blocking the door of Jubilife TV, and disappears completely when you beat Orberg Gym. They don't move him out of the way, they just straight up delete this boy from the game. So I had to move him so you could access the building, and get rid of the flag that removes him, since you need to be able to do this at any point in the game. Neither of the other clowns ever disappear, so it's just weird that they have this one guy serve double duty as tutorial, but also roadblock that they can delete later. Okay, well, after that, you have the scene where you talk to the CEO, and now all of the clowns are in quiz mode. They gotta do two things. They need to give you a coupon, and then they need to set a flag so the game knows you've already gotten the coupon from this clown. Once you have all three coupons, you can go back to the CEO, whose script does not check for the coupons. There is no concern for whether or not these things are in your inventory. He specifically checks for, and only for, whether or not the three flags were set for having spoken to the three clowns. The coupons essentially only exist as an in-universe concept that the game itself never interacts with. You've probably been waiting for me to walk you through all this code. So let's go through a couple scripts together to show exactly what gets done with the coupons. This is one of the clown scripts, starting from when you hit yes on the prompt. Play fanfare 1521. This will be easier to just show you. If I pop into the game's files really quick. Next, each area has its own text bank, and within Jubilife's, messages 46, 48, and 49 are the rest of the tutorial for this particular guy. Note that message 48 is made up of multiple lines. Now this section is a little developer shortcut for giving the player an item. You set the amount you want in variable 8005, and you set the item to give in variable 8004. If we check the Bulbapedia page for list of items by index number in Generation 4, you'll see that item 460 is Coupon 1. Common Script 2016 then handles the rest. Finally, there's this little bit they snuck in. It's the flag I mentioned earlier. If you were to talk to this particular clown again, this is the flag he'd check for. Meanwhile, back with what the CEO does, we're only concerned with a couple bits. Namely, we're looking for this command, check player has item. It isn't present anywhere in any of the functions called, because the game only uses this command up here, check flag. You can see one of the flags from earlier. As you might have guessed, these three are the flags set by the three clowns. If all three of those flags are set, we're able to get to this function, in which he takes the three coupons. Now here's the funny part. The take item command has three parameters. Once again, it's the item ID, how many to take from the player, but this last parameter is for a variable that checks whether or not the player even had the items you just took. You can pause if you want to read the specifics of that one. If the coupons weren't even in your inventory, the game would know, but they don't do anything with that information. This command down here writes to the same variable, which means that info has already been overwritten before anything was ever done with it. So, you know, if you saved in the middle of this event and then your dog chews up your cartridge and the only damage is a bit of save file corruption that deletes the Pokédex coupons from your inventory and nothing else, you'll be just fine. Again, this impacts roughly 0% of players, except for me personally. But get this, after you've done this, the CEO returns to the company building, and if you speak to him periodically throughout the game, he'll give you new apps as they're developed. This is based on how many badges you have. And it actually counts how many badges you have. You cannot get badges out of order in this game. It would have been extremely expected for them to just check whether or not you have the Fen badge, but they really do just count them, which is one thing that my rando desperately needed, especially when your badge case tends to look like this halfway through a playthrough. Just something I've got to deal with, since the game is always checking for badges to check your story progress. For example, I was having a lot of trouble with the event where you chase a galactic grunt out of Pastoria. Turns out that Route 213 just specifically checks for whether or not you have the Fen badge. Well, once I swapped this for some flags, I could reliably get the secret potion from Cynthia. Or, the secret potion check. But let's talk about the genuine article. If we head to Route 210 and talk to the Psyduck, praise Arceus, because these guys really do check for whether the secret potion is in your inventory. But did you know that all 4 of the Psyduck here run the same script when talked to? Even though you can clearly only access one of these first 2 in vanilla. I'm very fortunate, since it means that if the player gets Rock Smash and Strength, and Defog depending on their options, I can still gate access from the Celestic side and not have to change anything. Even if it means the scene plays out a little, This is where Cynthia hands you the old charm, and originally I had no idea what to do with this item. It's not actually used to gate progress anywhere. I decided to make the Team Galactic events in Celestic require the charm, so that way this item can still serve a purpose. It only blocks 3 items, but it's better than the 0 it would be otherwise. The same can't be said for some of the game's unused items, so let's talk about those. Let's start with this guy. The AP Manual check I made actually overwrites this guy, the point card. The point card keeps track of your BP. In Diamond and Pearl. When Platinum introduced the Versus Recorder, a dedicated Frontier record would handle that. But the point card still remains, and its functionality hasn't gone anywhere. It really can track your BP, same as it did before. But okay, anyone who played Diamond and Pearl could have guessed the point card was still here. But do you know about the rule book? It says it's for choosing the rules you want to use for linked battles, but that's all handled through menus, not items. This does nothing when used from the bag, and besides, can you imagine rolling up to the Wi-Fi console and being told, sorry, you can't set your gameplay style until you get a rulebook? And then we come upon the curious case of the seal bag. It's the same as the seal case, but just holds fewer seals, according to the description. I can only imagine you would receive this and then upgrade to the seal case later. But what I really want is to confirm the claim that it can only hold 10 seals. I don't even know what that means. 10 different kinds? 10 seals per type? 10 seals overall? I tried these all out with a save editor, but they made no difference. So clearly I have to receive seals in-game to see the limit. A save editor can give you whatever you want, but the in-game interaction should work correctly, yes? Well, there's just one problem. In order to receive seals, every NPC in the game checks to see if you have the seal case. So I can't actually receive any seals with just the seal bag. Except from the lady who gives you the seal case in the first place. I've already replaced her gift with the AP Manual check, so let's see if having the seal bag limits you. And it does not. Even with tons of seals of varying types, I was able to go above 10 in various ways. You know what's really damning? You can do this with no seal bag or seal case. Truth is, the seal case was never a real item with any function to begin with. There's an internal list of all the seals you've collected that you can see in the Ball Capsule's PC menu, but you can access this with or without a seal holding item. The only thing the seal case does is function as a barrier to prevent you from interacting with NPCs that give seals. Remove it and it checks from the game entirely, and everything functions as normal. The seal bag hints at functionality that not only doesn't exist for itself, doesn't exist in the game at all. I'm pretty sure the same applies to the loot sack, which Bulbapedia says stores underground items, even though its description says it's for items you got in the coal mine. Certainly hinting at a scrapped or changed mechanic, but feel free to give me your speculation on that one. Having checked the game's internals with a friend, we can pretty much confirm that no, the loot sack does not have an effect, but it's fun to imagine what you'd have done with it in the coal mine. So, almost certainly it would have just been an offshoot of the kinds of things you already do in the underground. Well, let's get back on track. The Red Chain and the Magma Stone have clear ties to the Lake Trio and Heatran, and are real things that appear during the game's events, but they're not anything that the player ever possesses. For the randomizer's sake, they feel ripe for repurposing, so maybe one day they could be useful for something. I have no idea what they could be used for though, so guess I'm gonna do my classic YouTuber impression. Let's see here. What do you think the Red Chain and the Magma Stone could be used for in a randomizer? Leave a comment down below! Would you believe the contest pass from Ruby and Sapphire is still in here? This thing didn't even make it to Emerald. There's a very clear thing that I could use it for in my rando, but that would require me to be literally evil, which I think I'm gonna pass on. Besides, if I really was gonna do contest rando, I'd use the dress for that instead. Come on. Then there's the storage key. This one really amuses me. See, in Diamond and Pearl, after the Lake Trio is totally smuggled by the Galactic admins, you return to Veilstone and get the storage key to infiltrate the Galactic warehouse. In Platinum, this event is rewritten to include the new character Looker, and what he does is get the storage key and use it to open the door so you can infiltrate the warehouse. It's exactly the same, but now Looker is the one who gets the key instead of the player, which means that completely removes it as an obtainable item. Unsurprisingly, the storage key is still in the game. But what did surprise me is that it still works. Not only does the door check for the storage key in your inventory instead of some event flag, the script up to and including the door's animation is still in the game and functional. This doesn't even break anything if you later let things play out the way Platinum does them. Honestly, I expected the lack of door to crash the game when it came time to play the animation, but no, it works fine. Still plays the sound though. This one did make it into my rando, but I made it optional since it's not in the vanilla game. Just one more left, but unlike the contest pass, it was a huge source of inspiration. Consider, if you will, the Battle Zone. This is a place near and dear to my heart, but it didn't start out that way. Originally, I was thinking that I wouldn't include it at all. It's post-game after all, and the goal here is Cynthia. How could I include an area that is only accessible after you win? Well, enter the final unused item, the SS ticket. Appearing in every game prior, it was a bit of a shame that the SS ticket didn't appear in Platinum, even though there is a boat in this region. Alright, pop quiz. Trivia check-in. Do you know the names of all the boats from Gens 1 through 4? Gen 1 has the SS Am. Gen 2 has the SS Aqua. Gen 3 has the SS Tidal. And interestingly, in Diamond and Pearl, you reach the battle zone with this boat, the SS Sinnoh. Pretty boring name. But by Platinum, this ocean route is covered in ice and needs a special boat to reach. Enter the SS Spiral. Another utilitarian name, it's literally a drill boat. But hey, I think it's cute. But hey, if you didn't know that one, you can name this guy for extra credit. Anyway, back in the randomizer's realm, I've made it so that now you need the SS ticket to go to the battle zone. Just receive this, and you can leave from Snow Point City. And if they put your beacon badge in Stark Mountain, I'd like to personally extend my formal apology as the creator of this randomizer. No one should have to suffer like that. But, I mean, if we're stopping by Stark Mountain anyway, might as well check out some Battle Zone trivia while we're here. A while ago, while looking for maps to edit, I tried to find the map models for various Battle Frontier rooms. Rooms like the big rental display in the Battle Factory, or Argenta's stage. But no matter where I looked, I could not find them. And that's because they don't exist. These are all a big ploy of smoke and mirrors. As mentioned earlier, every map in this game is a 3D model. Unless it's a new battle room in the Battle Frontier. They are flat planes with pre-rendered backgrounds plopped on top of them. Not unlike, say, Link's room in Ocarina of Time. I recall being baffled once going to Spriter's Resource and finding pics of the Battle Factory and Battle Hall presented with no context. I assumed they were just screenshots to pair with the rest of the sheet, but No, these are the actual in-game pre-rendered backgrounds. Shoutouts to the Battle Factory's arena. Once you know, this map especially is the most you can never unsee it. Look at that. That is, oh, that's just like a disc with a picture on it. Oh. It's also why all these areas have fixed camera angles and they direct the player around. You never get to walk in them yourself. In fact, I'm pretty sure the character who walks around during these scenes isn't even your actual player model. In fact, if you'll indulge me for a moment, pop into one of the Battle Tower's maps and you can see here that this area comes preloaded with an NPC that has Dawn's sprite. The sprite set that an NPC uses is based on the entries in this list. For example, Overworld Entry 13 is the blonde woman sprite that the beauties use, with the sprite ID of 12. However, this NPC uses Entry 101, which is a 3D overworld without a sprite ID. This is because Entry 101 is a special NPC that has a choosable sprite set. There's a variable in the game that Entry 101 uses to determine what sprites to use. This is how Dawn and Lucas work in the game. Rather than placing both an NPC with Lucas's sprites and an NPC with Dawn's sprites, and having every cutscene in the game call the player's gender to determine who to spawn, they just set this sprite variable the moment you start your new game. But since the game can modify this variable at any point, we can just go ahead and set it to the player's sprites. In other words, when you enter a battle facility, the moment you step through this door, you're gone. That is not your player model. That is a preloaded NPC wearing your sprites. You're somewhere off screen while an empty sprite sheet is walking around looking like you on top of a bunch of JPEGs with no collision or geometry. The entire battle frontier is essentially a very elaborate puppet show. Though, bear in mind that this only goes for the facilities added in Platinum. Everything in the battle tower is a real map model. And also, all of the lobbies added for the battle frontier are real models too. As for stuff elsewhere in the battle zone, did you know that even after you clear Stark Mountain and gain access to the battleground, they never remove this text box? Some of you probably did know that. Okay, here. I've got something you definitely didn't know. If you head to the resort area and head into this house, you'll find this young man. What you didn't know is that the game actually gives him different text depending on your gender. If you're male, he says message 3. You've seen every Pokemon in Sinnoh! That is so cool! I'm going to travel with Pokemon when I get bigger. If you're female, he says message 4, which reads, You've seen every Pokemon in Sinnoh! That is so cool! I'm going to travel with Pokemon when I get bigger. Yes, this area's text bank makes space for 2 identical copies of the same line that both get called depending on your gender. For this NPC whose dialogue seems pretty gender neutral, all things considered. Make no mistake, this game gets a little silly sometimes in that regard. You know, in Veilstone City, when you head to the gym, Lucas will tell you he took a peek in the game corner, and Dawn says she went to the department store. No, you know, it's fine. Girls love shopping and guys love gambling. Oh my god, it's not that serious. No. No. Though Lucas will throw on an, anyway, keep it up, that Dawn does not. Admittedly, I'm a little obsessed with the differences between these two and their dialogue. Definitely not just model swaps, but distinct, mutually exclusive characters. Most of their Veilstone dialogue outside of that is shockingly similar, though. When you team up, both Dawn and Lucas refer to you guys as a dream team. Dawn will call Looker a funny man, while Lucas just straight up calls him a weirdo. But let's talk about a real scene. I'm coming for your fucking childhood with this one, okay? I'm talking about Dawn and Lucas on Route 207 before you enter Mount Coronet. In this scene, you're given the Versus Seeker and the Dowsing Machine app. But first, you'll be asked to pick a hand, right or left. It's just a little game they're playing to make you think you have to choose your gift, only for them to say, you can have the other one too. Anyway, it doesn't matter what hand you pick. The hand you choose here does not impact the scene at all. Now, if you grew up with this game, I genuinely want to know, because I've had at least a couple friends believe this was the case. Did you think that there was separate dialogue for getting the Versus Seeker first and getting the Dowsing Machine first? Because there simply is not. There are two damning pieces of evidence here, so to start, once again, let's go to the scripts. What we're looking for is the moment you choose right or left. First, they have to check our gender. I mentioned earlier that they don't have to call our gender for every Dawn or Lucas scene, but since the two have unique dialogue, they have to do it anyway. So bear in mind that these two functions are identical, but one calls Dawn's lines and the other calls Lucas's lines. I'm playing as a girl here, so let's go to this function. There's a special command for making a box with a yes or no option, but this isn't that. So they instead need to make a list select box with custom text. This command right here, list standard text, actually pulls from a special text bank that contains all of the special list options across the entire game. So we'll pull that up over here. Over here is where you specify which lines you want, so if we check 137 and 138, that's our guy. Once the show list command is triggered, all of these commands together pop open a list at these coordinates with these options and then waits for the player to make a choice. That choice is then stored in this variable. And as you can see, once the player makes their choice, the game plays message 5. So it's not even a case like the kid in the resort area where he had the full setup and was just given two identical lines. No, they didn't even intend to check for your answer. And to bring it home, let's check the entire text bank for Route 207. The script may not check, but was that an oversight? As you can see, no. This is everything in Route 207's text archive. All 4 lines for Dawn, all 4 lines for Lucas, the lines for the bike guy near Orberg, and the text for the signs. Oh, right, if you're wondering where the trainer dialogue is, trainers are handled separately with their own text bank. Yes, there is a single archive of text in this game for every single regular trainer battle in the game, which contains all of their pre-battle dialogue, the lines they say when they lose, their overworld text after the battle, and what they say when challenged again with the Versus Seeker. This archive is 2,496 lines long. But let's get back to the topic at hand. I can't help but compare this to the Juniper Clink situation in Black and White. It's a bit of classic trivia at this point, but when you reach Mistralton City in that game, you meet Cedric Juniper, who checks to see if you've seen a Clink before. However, literally right before this moment is a battle with N, who has a Clink, so it's impossible not to have seen one. But the game really does check, which means there's unused dialogue for every casual playthrough of the vanilla game. Meanwhile, the Sinnoh games can't even get text for the choice they asked us to make. We've been cheated and lied to since 2007! Rise up! There's one more thing on Route 207 that presented something wild for my randomizer. A unique scenario that none of the other Pokemon games have. Hell, barely any randos have something like this. Let's talk about how the game handles items. It's a very simple thing. How does the game know that you've picked up an item, hidden or otherwise? Very simple. There's just a unique flag given to every single item in the game. That one item on the rock climb hill in Veilstone, that flips flag 1123 when you collect it. And as long as flag 1123 is on in your save file, that item won't spawn. Extremely straightforward. If you wanted to add a new item, you'd need to find a new flag for it. And you have to make sure nothing else in the game touches that flag. If a random script were to use flag 1123 for something, it'd delete that item from the game before you even got there. Hidden items are a little more complicated. Rather than only having a separate flag, every single hidden item runs its own script, but it's the same thing. The hidden item over in the meteorite crater runs script 8259. That handles both what item it is and the flag that determines whether or not you've collected it. To my knowledge, no Pokemon game has ever made a mistake within this system until Pokémon Platinum. Well, actually, until Diamond and Pearl, but Platinum didn't fix it. If we head through Mount Coronet and pop back up on the mountainside on Route 207, we've got this iron down here, a timer ball right here, and a hidden item on the wall immediately across from the rock climb slope. It's a red shard. But let's rewind to before we pick that up. If we instead head back towards Route 206 and into Wayward Cave, and make our way all the way around to this pair of hikers and check what's past them, there it is. A hidden red shard. You know where this is going. This red shard uses script 8008. And this red shard uses script 8008. These are the same hidden item, placed twice in 2 separate locations. Pour one out for whoever picked it up on Route 207 first, and then later went through Wayward Cave. They'd fight these hikers, find themselves in a dead end with no item, and feel pretty ripped off. In fact, it'd really stand out when you consider that every single other pair of trainers in here has something behind them to reward fighting them. Initially, I wondered if maybe they skipped a number and wrote the same one twice. In Wayward Cave's upper floor, you'll find item 8009 over here and 8006 over here. But 8007 is nowhere to be found. Downstairs, they continue with 8010 and 8011. And Route 207s are all over the place. The pieces are coming together. One of these is supposed to be 8007, but they wrote 8008 twice, and now 8007 goes unused. It's right here. The hidden item in Valor Lakefront that you have to come from Route 222 to get, that's 8007. So I have no idea. Maybe Route 207 just got an erroneous extra hidden item. Definitely feels like the one in Wayward Cave should be there at least. But now comes the issue for my randomizer. How do I handle this? I decided that I would just honor the way it works in vanilla. You can either pick it up in Wayward Cave or on Route 207. Which means that writing logic for it was a nightmare, but more importantly, every single location in the game needs a name. Randomizers need to be able to point to any check in the game and say, that one. So I present to you, Mount Coronet 2F, item between white rocks. Route 207, item above rock climb slope. And Route 207 or Wayward Cave, hidden item that's either south of hikers in Wayward Cave or above rock climb slope on Route 207. It's beautiful, isn't it? Truly what it means to reach peak efficiency. Let's dip into some more technical stuff. Now is when we finally swing back around to the Valley Windworks and Flow Aroma area. It's only been, 30 minutes since we were here? Unless you're watching the video in multiple sittings, I guess. You'll remember that I mentioned how poorly balanced the works key is among all the game's progression items. You do remember that, right? Well, truthfully, I'd gotten through quite a few versions of the rando before realizing that I'd actually implemented it wrong. Can you blame me? 90% of your playthroughs won't even interact with this guy. Well, here's the rub. In classic Platinum fashion, the door to the Valley Windworks does not check for the works key. It checks for flag 159. Well, while we're here, you want to know how locked doors work? The game employs the use of these 2 overworld objects, warps and spawnables. Spawnables are just invisible, interactable objects. It's how we get signs on the wall and hidden items. Warps are fairly obvious, but they're split into 2 parts. There are specific tiles in the game marked as warps, which will handle how the player will transition, and there are separate warp objects that contain the data for where to put the player, including which header they're going to and the map coordinates they should spawn on. Just bear in mind, the tiles must be paired with the object in order to work. Also, really quick, apparently the bridge in the resort area uses the bridge tile type. I know that sounds like it makes sense, but the whole purpose of the bridge tile is to allow you to pass underneath. This is flush with the ground, or water. This is not functionally a bridge, it just uses the bridge model. And also, bridge tiles don't even do anything without the corresponding bridge start tiles to signify to the game where to draw the... I can't get into this right now. Where were we? When the door is locked, we put the warp somewhere. Usually a few tiles back where they're out of the way, and we put the spawnable there so the player has something to interact with when the door doesn't work. Give them some dialogue to explain that the door is locked. When the door is unlocked, we swap them around. This is what's responsible for that little issue with the battleground door. When you finish Stark Mountain, they put the warp back at the door so that it works again, but they just forgot to move the spawnable. Oops. But back to Flow Aroma. If you need flag 159 to set any of this up, what triggers that? You could probably guess. It's the scene where you beat the Galactic Grunts in Flow Aroma Meadow and are given the Works key. But hold on! Back it up, back it up. That item ball right there. Predictably, it's not really an item ball. It does not use the item property, so this is just like any regular NPC. But the sprite they use is the Pokeball. You would think that this ball is just like a cutscene prop. It doesn't do anything, but it exists to show up after the battle and get picked up by the Honeyman. But here's the crazy part. If you were actually to interact with this ball, you'll find that it has a script to run. Let's run through it. Play Fanfare 1500, which is this sound. Lock All is how they freeze everything in place while you're in a text box. And Face Player is a pretty funny choice, given that item balls don't have another sprite to face you with, but you can imagine this little trio of commands is just all over the game. This combo right here is the script that gives you an item. In this case, item 438, the Works key. Then, it sets flag 159, and it removes Overworld 3, which is itself. So basically, it's a recreation of the standard item ball script, but edited to include flipping flag 159. If I change it so that the item ball shows up before the battle, we can see what that looks like here. I have no idea why this functionality exists. If we look at the script that handles the post-battle cutscene, you'll see once the screen fades, here's where the ball gets added. Here's where they check where you're standing, so the Honeyman can walk up to you, and then they remove the ball. Then it's message 7, and then they give us the Works key, just like how we saw earlier, remembering to set flag 159. I originally thought that maybe they were going for one of those fail-safes if you don't have room in your bag, which makes no sense for a variety of reasons. So my only guess is that they had a different version of this scene planned at one point and decided it was weird for the ball to just sit there for you to pick up. Is the Honeyman supposed to just casually ignore the item ball that clearly just spawned next to him? Leftovers like this are fantastic to speculate over. But all this just because they didn't want to write this line. Sometimes I think the devs were allergic to this command. But while that sentiment is definitely what makes up the bulk of this game, it's not the whole story. Let's head to Canalave. The series frequently has to deal with the idea of skipping HMs. Every single HM in the series can theoretically be skipped by just having a Pokémon traded to you with that move. The classic Mew Under the Truck story relies on you trading a Pokémon with Cut just so you can skip the SS and leaving. In fact, immediately before Canalave, the whole reason they have to place roadblocks on Route 218 is because they can't have you skipping the Celestic Town events, which includes the first battle with Cyrus, just because you traded over something with Surf. The next HM is Strength. Once you beat Byron, your rival tells you to come to the library and talk to Rowan. After you get the Strength HM. If we go straight to the library without getting the HM, he'll tell you to go to Iron Island. Generally, you'll pop over to Iron Island, grab the HM from Riley, come back, and his dialogue will instead let us in. But let's take a look under the hood to see what he really checks for. By default, very straightforward check. They've actually used the check player has item command, and they're looking for item 423. Gee, I wonder what item ID 423 is. Oh! If you pass this check, we go to function 40, which is just the scene where he heads into the building to let you continue with the game. If you fail the check, we of course just get the Go to Iron Island text. But look at this! There's one more check that'll allow you to jump to function 40. If any Pokemon in your party happens to have move ID 70 in their moveset, your rival will let you pass. Sure enough, that's Strength, meaning that even though you do not need to use Strength, the game has decided to canonize trading a Pokemon over with the move anyway. He specifically tells you to head to Iron Island, but as long as you have access to Strength, the rival will give you a pass. This is genuinely mind-blowing to me, as I'm sure we all have this idea in our head of Pokemon getting super railroady by Gen 4 and not giving you any wiggle room. But they looked at the Celestic and Iron Island events and said, that one's got important story flags and plot beats. That one though? Well, they can skip that if they like. I appreciate that. Alright, last one for you. And it's my personal favorite, so you know I had to save it. We're heading back to Route 206. A weirdly dense amount of trivia in this area. Well, over on Route 206 is the Cycling Road, which covers the secret entrance to Wayward Cave. Quick aside, shoutouts to Boundary Break. If you've ever wondered whether or not they actually modeled a cliff face and a cave entrance down here, despite the entire point being that you literally can't see this area, the answer is yes. Here, I'll even delete some chunks in Blender so you can see what it looks like in-game. But now that you've seen it, I want you to think about how this entrance works in this game. When thinking in terms of a standard 3D game, it's quite straightforward. But as I fill you in on the ways Pokémon Platinum works, you'll realize it's not that simple. For starters, we have to consider the complications when it comes to vertically oriented 3D space in this game. Namely, the maps may be 3D models, but the game absolutely still relies on a simple top-down concept of tiles and permissions. We discussed this when talking about warps and spawnables. Ever want to surf in the hard home fountains? Well, we just have to set their tile type to water. But if everything is a 2D plane of tile types, how does this work when a bridge is on top of something else? Well, they just use the bridge type tile permission. This handles everything from you can't walk off the bridge when you're above it, to everything is normal under it, with various styles from bike bridges to bridges over water and bridges with wild encounters underneath them. But that right there is our conundrum. Earlier we discussed the way warps work, and learned that they too require a special tile type. If bridges require a special tile to work, and warps require a special tile to work, how on earth does the game handle this sole instance of a bridge sitting on top of a warp? Well, okay, if we try to solve this, we can start with, there's a type of warp that requires a wall behind it to activate. So just put a wall down below here. Except wall boundaries are also handled via 2D planes. There's no way to only put a wall down here below the road, such that we wouldn't also collide with it while on the road too. Now, given my reputation for exhaustive coverage, I should probably mention that these maps are not the only way collision is handled. After all, I'm sure you're wondering how this spot is possible given what I just showed. There is a second system referred to as plates. No, not those. These. They rest on top of maps and create the terrain of an area. It's how we get stairs and ramps, and when set up in certain ways, even if we delete collision, we may still be stopped because of terrain. Terrain maps and plates are very complicated under the hood. Very easy to make and sight read, but they contain a lot of little fringe rules. Just know that for our purposes, warp tiles need collision, not terrain, in order to function. So okay, we use a warp that doesn't require a wall. But would the warp not just activate both on the bridge and below it? Well, yes, that is exactly what would happen. Okay, let's just drop all that pretense, because obviously Game Freak did the same thing they did with bridges over wild encounters and the like. They just made a special tile that handles both, and yeah, obviously they didn't do that. Yeah, it turns out they just literally did not figure out a solution for how warps would work under bridges. So they came up with the best fucking workaround I've ever seen in my life. They put a chick on the warp tile. Cyclist Megan's one and only job is to stand on this tile and never move. Now you can access the warp when you're under the bridge, but you just can't stand on this tile at all from above. That's my fucking developer! All in all, after all this work, I've gotta say, Platinum is a really unique rando experience. I've spent so much time trying to come up with new settings to help balance the playthrough, from roadblocks on routes 214 and 212 to try and give Surf more power while restricting what the bike gives you access to the plate hunt goal, an alternate goal where you have to find all 16 plates before challenging Arceus in the Hall of Origin. But the number of times I've been condemned to Canalave early is just Well, let's just say good luck to figuring out that rival battle before you're allowed to do anything over here. I suppose I must do my due diligence and actually tell you how you can play this project of mine, huh? I originally had a much more straightforward answer here, but, well, this video took so long that a lot of things have changed. So this video's now gonna take even longer as we add new project status! Woo! First, for the original Platinum AP Manual project of mine, everything from the downloads to the setup guides can be found on my GitHub. If you aren't already acquainted, I would start by learning how to set up Archipelago. Links to all that stuff are in the description. Essentially, you'll install Archipelago, you'll add a few custom files to it, you'll patch a ROM, you'll randomize said ROM, and after opening the game in Archipelago, you'll be playing. Maybe get some friends in on it and do a multi-world. Actually, if you're down to grab one more thing, you can straight up replace this client here with a full map tracker and walk through the whole game with all the info you'd ever need. Thank you, Sophie. The tracker makes it so easy to play, and goes to show just how far this project's come. But 2 other projects have materialized since this video went into production, and it's the reason that I have to extend this portion. They're both pretty important, so let's start with, the actual Pokémon Platinum Archipelago Randomizer. This is the full implementation that has most things handled for you. You send and receive everything in-game for real, Archipelago patches your ROM, and all of your options are reflected in-game with nothing extra on your part. It is just the real randomizer for the game. But it's not feature complete as of yet. But the dev's a pal of mine, so let's just have him tell you about it. Welcome in, TRUEBLUE, and thanks for this little guest spot. You think it's fair to call Platinum AP the spiritual successor to the manual that I made? What do you think? We lean into it a little?
I think it's fine. I mean, you know, you've helped a lot with the art and everything.
It's true.
I don't think I'd consider the manual project dead.
No, not just yet. And besides, manual still got all those cool unique features. Plate Hunt Goal, the Flow Aroma Shop, the Berry Trees. But all these will just be in the AP Rando eventually.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of features that I haven't had time to get to yet.
You know, we're coming up on summer vacation. Soon TM, right?
So the classic, it'll be out tomorrow.
That said, there's one more piece of trivia we can share thanks to something we worked on for the Platinum AP.
So this was something we were working on, was making it so you could take the boat between different places. Different connections means more options, which I'm a big fan of.
Yep. You wanted to connect Pastoria to the other piers in Canalave and Snowpoint, so I threw together a new map for the area. Little aside for the viewers. When the boat cutscene plays, you can play a cutscene for the boat traveling up, down, left, or right. Canalave's boat travels up and down, but Snowpoint's travels left and right. And since Platinum replaced that boat from Diamond and Pearl, that means the horizontal boat scenes have also been replaced.
And it's a really cool animation. But they left the code in for the SS Spiral moving laterally.
Yeah. I remember you forced the game to use the original white boat, but you didn't change the direction. So imagine our surprise when we load up the game and see this.
I was really surprised, actually, when I just put the code in and I forgot to set the direction to be vertical because I didn't think horizontal would work, and it just worked.
Just an entire leftover scene from Diamond and Pearl, still fully functional. Well, Blue, on that note, I'm glad I got to have you. I believe this rando's gonna be the best one out there.
Yeah, I hope so. We'll make it the best.
It's everything I could have hoped for, and as you might have noticed throughout the video, I've got a few skills to contribute to the project. Namely, I handle mapping and custom sprites, while also contributing my existing script changes to save Blue a ton of work. I'll link to that project, but you'll need to be in the Archipelago server to keep the closest eye on it. But just know that between the GitHub links and the setup guides, there are no Discord servers that are mandatory to play any of these. I know how to patch a GBA ROM, Elliewood. And lastly, I've made another manual project. It's Bayonetta 2, baby! Whoa! Oh, no, not that one. I mean, that one is real. I did make that one, but it's not what I'm... Fuck it, I'm making a trailer. 1 year after the events of Team Galactic at Spear Pillar, the battle frontier to the north resumes its annual tradition, the Battle Zone Challenge. Trainers of note are scouted to participate in this televised event, where they'll be tasked to take on and defeat the 5 Frontier Brains. But there's a twist. They'll be starting completely from scratch. No items, no badges, and just one Pokémon. Fortunately for them, they've got a whole island to explore. From humble beginnings, they'll comb every bit of the island in search of Pokémon to train, a team to build, and the tools to proceed further until they've made it to their final challenge, a showdown with the Tower Tycoon himself. Pokémon Platinum Battle Zone Challenge. The Pokémon Platinum Battle Zone Challenge is a new ROM hack I made specifically for randomizers. Platinum itself is a huge game, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. With the berry trees in the accessory shop, it's got over 800 locations. It's just too much! So what if you wanted a smaller Platinum? A bite-sized chunk of the game to play through pretty quickly. That's what Battle Zone Challenge is for. The game takes place entirely in the Battle Zone, features small changes and a new dungeon, and a new goal of defeating all 5 Frontier Brains. My inspiration comes from the idea that an event would exist for the Battle Frontier, which triples as a tourist attraction, a televised event that functions as a tourist advertisement, and a period of maintenance for them, where all of the normal facilities are shut down. Instead, special rooms will host each battle once you've acquired the means to enter those facilities. I hope you'll try this one out as well. And all of these projects, truthfully. Nuzlocke and Solocke and Picklocke are probably going to dominate the randomizer search results for a while. But in my heart of hearts, this is the future of Rando. Hop on the train or get left behind, buddy! But really, your attendance on this journey would be greatly appreciated. But with that, we're at the end of this little trip. Let's talk about videos. I'd love to really get back into the groove. Start a new shorts series to function as interim vids, start streaming on YouTube as well as Twitch. You know, just tend the garden a little more. You know what I mean? It's been pretty difficult managing the editing, the randomizers, and the streams. At least a couple of you came to the streams just looking to make sure I was still working on this one. Truthfully, I do appreciate you showing up. Up next, as a little companion, I'll throw together some stream highlights of us playing the Platinum Rando. A good intro to it, and also more goofballery from your favorite goobers. Rampardos. I'm not afraid of you. Come on out. What are you gonna do to me? Oh fuck, I don't like that. That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not even fair. You know what? It's not even gonna do any damage to me. And after that, do I even need to say it? You already know what it is. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you soon. Hit it!